We just talked about the governing Liberals, but the opposition will see some changes as well. Pierre Poilievre is back in the House of Commons after winning an Alberta by-election, and the NDP formally launched its leadership race to replace Jagmeet Singh. There you see it online today. Dan Moulton, Larissa Waller, Kathleen Monk, and Laura Stone are back to talk about that. Let's start with the NDP. Kathleen, who's here in studio with me. What the heck is going to happen? Who's going to replace Jagmeet Singh? And how, more to the point, how important is this race for your party?
Yeah, it's really important. But listen, Ottawa's longest running parlor game is predicting the demise of the NDP. And that's what's been happening in columns and on radio shows, for the last few weeks. And, I have to, break the news that, in fact, the NDP will probably continue to survive. It's been around for over 60 years and will continue to survive post this. But I think the race presents an opportunity really for kind of reinvigoration of the party, new ideas, new people, hopefully, and new membership. And with that comes an influx of cash as well. So far, we don't have any official candidates. We've had people who have declared their intention, but there's nobody who has passed the kind of vetting process so far. Candidates have submitted their applications, but haven't been pushed through yet. So we'll wait to see who actually gets on the slate. But, I'm really hoping that we're going to get some really interesting candidates. Like, I really do want to see, a Zohran Mandami-like candidate. That's the Democratic candidate right now for New York City. Somebody who's really bringing fresh ideas and invigorating people and doing new ways of organizing, and bringing, humor and levity and addressing the affordability issues that really everyone cares about right now. We see that in the polling, and it mattered in the last election, and it's going to matter in future elections.
Just really quickly to follow up, do you think that needs to be the focus for the new leader versus what James Moore had a column citing Charlie Angus's comments, Don Davies, about sort of the focus on personality of the leader?
Well, listen, the personalization of politics and political leaders particularly, it has been happening for decades now, literally decades. I think really Tony Blair, you can track it back to Alistair Campbell and Tony Blair, UK Labour, then when it was really starting to be written about. And it's been imported all around the world, maybe even back to Ronald Reagan in the States in terms of personality of politicians being the real focus and the focus on the leader. I think that what the most important thing for New Democrats is to have good ideas and to really kind of move back to messaging, a message that connects with working people, and how you do that by presenting ideas and hopefully some energy that the party's lacked for a really, really long time. We're facing a massive inequality crisis right now. Now is the time for New Democratic ideas to surface.
Are you running? No, I'm just kidding.
No.
Larissa, let me ask you about the Conservatives, because your point before we went to the break was largely that you thought that the Liberals were vulnerable on a number of fronts. Pierre Poilievre is now back in the House of Commons after suffering a loss in his riding that he held for a couple of decades. Are you expecting, or do you think there need to be any changes in the way Conservatives approach this sitting, and where do they exhibit vulnerabilities in your view?
Yeah, you know what? I think it's good news for the Conservatives to have Pierre back in the House. He shines when he's in Parliament, when he's on his feet holding the Prime Minister to the fire. Our vulnerabilities, or maybe our growth areas, obviously women, right? The Conservative leader needs to make inroads with women. The good news here is we have the policy positions to back it up, right? And right now is when Canadians really care about affordability, when they really care about crime, when they really care about safety. And I think a lot of those issues resonate with women. I think that in terms of the Conservative positioning, in light of the NDP leadership race, we've made a lot of inroads as Conservatives with organized labor, especially with private sector labor, and I think that will just continue to grow. I think Pierre Poilievre is very, very popular with especially the rank and file. I think that'll present a challenge to Kathleen's point of the NDP audience that their leadership is going to be speaking to or trying to attract. But I think in terms of what Conservatives are going to be focusing on in this session, it's going to be affordability. It's going to be also taking that shine off of Mark Carney a little bit and saying, he promised the world and he's not delivering.
Dan, what's your view on what advantages the Conservatives have heading into the fall versus what vulnerabilities you perceive they have?
Well, I think certainly Pierre Poilievre's big challenge as a leader is that he lost his seat in the last election, and while he's returning to Parliament, it is through what it would be generally seen as an easy path for him. It was made expeditious by the Prime Minister's decision to call the by-election right away, but it wasn't a difficult path. And so the question becomes, if you lose an election and you lose your seat, how do you get back to looking like a winner again? He spent the last several years, when Justin Trudeau was Prime Minister, looking like the Prime Minister in waiting, presenting himself as a very upstarted insurgent force that looked like a winner. He left the last election as a loser. And so how do you change that dynamic? I don't think it will be exclusively by doing the same thing that he was doing in the past. I mean, seeing him out last week or the week before on this carbon tax 2.0 thing was, I think, a bit of a mistake in a lot of ways. I understand Larissa's points around emphasizing affordability and costs rising for Canadians. I think those are strong issues for the Conservatives, but I think you also need to find paths to look fresh, to look like you're taking some lessons from the last election and demonstrating some new inroads with voters that you struggled with. I think women voters, as Larissa points out, are a huge issue for the Conservatives and will continue to be. And the message that Mark Carney promised the world and didn't deliver it would only work if he fails to deliver. And so I think that it's a little too soon to say whether or not this government is falling short of the promises that were made in the last election, given that that election wasn't very long ago in the minds of voters.
As I'm listening to everyone, Laura, I'm sort of reflecting on all the news I consumed over the summer, sort of in a different way, like hosting radio, but not this show, in a different way than I would to host the show. And I feel like what's missing from a lot of both the government and the opposition is like any level of humility. Like when you listen to the Conservatives, it's like they basically won. If you listen to the Liberals, it's like they won by 45 seats. And I wonder how that ends up playing out in the House.
Well, it will be interesting to see Prime Minister Carney go up against Pierre Poilievre in that arena, because, as Larissa mentioned, that is sort of where Pierre Poilievre shone. But he was up against Justin Trudeau, who had been in power for almost a decade, who was struggling on some policy fronts, who had a record to run on. And so I think it was kind of an easy target for him. It will be interesting to see the tone and the level of seriousness and maturity if Mr. Poilievre is able to bring that to the table a little more. I think there is still a likability factor. And look, I mean, I think we've seen the polling there. I mean, clearly when it comes to on a personal level, Canadians are still feeling like they're attached to Mr. Carney. It hasn't been that long. They maybe haven't seen that much of him, and they're giving him a lot of the benefit of the doubt here. But, he's a very different personality and character than Mr. Trudeau. He doesn't really come across as if he cares as much as if people like him, in a sense that could be similar to Mr. Poilievre, right? And I think, this isn't really a battle of the social media stars, maybe in a way that it was against the former Prime Minister. So I think the House will still matter. I think it will matter how the Conservatives present not just Mr. Poilievre's vision, but the vision of the team. And is it still going to be the Pierre Poilievre show, or are we going to see more people like the Deputy Leader, Melissa Lantsman, who is just on the show? And so is there going to be more of a variety of voices coming forward from the Conservatives? But I think, the Liberals still want to operate as if they have a majority, and maybe they're able to do that because the election was not that long ago. We don't think the NDP want an election anytime soon. They're going to need some dancing partners in the House. But as time goes on, there might be some more vulnerabilities for the government. It certainly seems, though, that the Liberals are riding high in the polling and in public opinion.
Yeah, once again, those polls, there is that Abacus one that shows them close. The Nanos one shows them not close at all with the Liberals ahead. So we shall see how it bears out. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate a great discussion. Dan Moulton, Larissa Waller, Kathleen Monk, and Laura Stone. Our takeaway is up next. Stay right there.